Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope inshallah you had a good break. I had a very good one. And it's always a great honor to, I said to the brothers earlier in the break that I was wondering how come so many people from Mujda came to this place on earth, this specific place on earth, and subhanAllah how that works, because if you look back that some of us maybe their origins are from the same street, or maybe they're even neighbors, but how life is and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has our destiny that you'll meet each other in all kind of different parts of the world. I will never forget that I was in Melbourne, in Australia a couple of months ago giving a course, and you know, Moroccans, mashallah, that you'll find them everywhere. There's no place on earth where there are no Moroccans. You know, there's this joke which says there's a man, a Moroccan, he wanted to get rid of all Moroccans. He said, I'm going to go to a place where there are no Moroccans. He said, you know, I have to find this place on earth. So he went to Australia, and he was in a wheelchair, so he needed support, you know, to be helped from the airplane. So he arrived in Australia, in Melbourne, and you know, he needs a wheelchair. Somebody pushes the wheelchair in the airport. And the man doesn't speak English, he speaks Arabic, you know, the man in the wheelchair. So he says in Moroccan, he says, Barakallahu fika wuldi, in Moroccan, which means like, you know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. So the man answers in Moroccan dialect, in Australia, like, you know, Barakallahu Allah khilika al-walid. And he was like, what? It's like, the first one I meet is even Moroccan, not even the last one. So I was there, and subhanAllah, I had a lecture in the west side of Melbourne, and seen some brothers there from Morocco. And when I got to know them, and we had dinner together, I found that one of them is actually from the specific village I am originally from, which has maybe only 20 houses or something. So subhanAllah how that works. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us, as He says in the Quran al-Kareem, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. I mean, the fact we have been created amongst different colors and different lines and different ethnicities, and for the reason for us to get to know each other. And the funny part is, you know, something like racism, you know, something like thinking that you are better than the other, or that you are more worth than the other, or that the other is less than you because has a different color, you know, from the Badia and others from the city or from whatever. SubhanAllah, if you look at it, if you look at the concept of racism, or the concept of, you know, thinking that your race is better than other, Islam teaches us that's maybe the most stupid idea you can have. Why? Because everything goes back to Adam. You know, you can have 5 people in a room and all of them have different colors and everything, but in reality, at the end of the road, every one of you links to Adam. And that's the funny idea. So you can, you know, dislike me for my color, or for my origin, or for my background, or for my name, or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the road, you are my brother and sister in humanity. And when you look at Islam, subhanAllah, as a religion, and when you look at this specific ayah, it invests, or it focuses on that brotherhood in humanity in first instance. The problem is there that people don't like the idea. People don't like the idea that all people are equal, because it takes away, you know, that powerful, or that tool of power for many people. Look, when I, you know, slavery came from which idea? From the fact that the whites, because of their skin color, thought they're better than the blacks, right? And they found it a good idea that they used the blacks because they were strong and they looked in a way they're weak and poor for their own interests, right? Look at the concept of slavery. But people were used to that. Also in a town called Mecca in the 6th century. Khalas, people were used to that when you are black, you're a slave. People can buy and sell you, right? You are for a specific goal. When you are from a certain tribe, you are in a certain position, you are a leader because you have a name, etc., etc. So that was the concept of Mecca at that time. Reality is, people around the Arabic island, the Jazira al-Arabiya, looked at the Arabic island as some backwards place, correct? You know, the Roman Empire was not interested in the Arabic island, nor the Persians. The only one who was a bit interested was the Najashi, right, from Yemen. And he was not interested because Saudi or because the Arabic island had something to offer. No, because he was jealous at Mecca that people would come on pilgrimage to Mecca and not come to him in Yemen, right? That's the only reason for him to attack the year that Muhammad ﷺ was born. So anyway, so people were used to that kind of concept of living what we call today al-Jahiliyyah, right? You are powerful when you are from a certain tribe of Bani Khuza' or Bani Nadir or Bani Qaynuqa' or I don't know, Al-Aws or Khazraj, whatever that may be. So you have a certain position. A woman, the position of a woman could be sold and bought, right? In the Arabic island in those days, when you buy a house, you get a woman included. That's how it works. And even further than that, as we know from that period of time, Arabs, from the idea that the woman is something embarrassing, correct? And it only brings harm to society, forgetting that at the origin of every man is a woman as well, but we forgot that for a moment, right? But that's what they believed in. And that's it. People were happy with that. And subhanAllah, imagine from that backwards country, from that backwards place on earth, from that place where people used to kill their daughters, right after birth or even in the first years, from that exact place, the change of the world will start. See, again, if you want to understand the strength of the Islamic philosophy, the strength of Islam as a religion, you have to go back to how it was before. Because logically, by logic, by numbers, you can't explain that. Wallahi, you can't explain. You can't explain that 23 years, 13 years went already astray, right? The first 13 years. That in 10 years, Islam, how many followers did Muhammad have sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he came to Medina? How many? How many? 83, the brother says? Very little. 100, 200, 300, right? If you go at the Sirah, you'll find that about around 100 were in Habasha, right? In Abyssinia. And that the ones who went before, who were in Medina, also Khazraj, about 72 or 82.
18 Habasha.
18 Habasha, around the 80, Zakallah khair, around the 80 in Medina as well, right? And some who came with the Prophet, a total around the 300. That the Battle of Badr, which happened the second year, right, after Hijrah, Rasulullah was with around the 300 fighters. Around the 300 fighters, which was about 70% of the total Muslim population. So imagine, just try to imagine in your own self. Second year after Hijrah, Rasulullah was with 300 people. With how much people was he 2 years later at Uhud? How many people was he then? He left Medina with 1,000, but he reached Uhud with how many people? Around 650. Because the hypocrite, Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul, he left, right? He deserted. So the Prophet so around 1,000, that's the total population of around 1,500. That's the 4th year of Islam, of Hijrah, right? With how many people did Muhammad 4 years later go into Mecca? 10,000. Look at the numbers. Look at numbers. So 2 years was 300, then 2 years later was around 1,000, and then 4 years later around 10,000. That's the 8th year after Hijrah. With how many people was he at Hajjat al-Wada' 2 years later? Around between the 100, around 120 up to 145,000 people. Imagine how many times it got multiplied. See, to us today, it doesn't mean anything because it's numbers, But try to simulate that into your life today. Try to have anything in a form of success, in a message, in a world-changing message, and try to translate that into those kind of numbers. And not through internet and Facebook and that kind of communication. channels, but through the communication channel which existed those days. See, my dear brothers and sisters, the only way to understand these kind of changes and developments and these kind of successes is to understand the strength of this message. Because look, this message came and told the Arabs, what you are doing is wrong. It didn't tell them that in one day, or in 2 days, or in a week. No, but it started telling them that the concept of life you are living, racism and you know, the way you treat your wives and the way you treat your women and your children and society and the nature and the animals and etc., 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 it was teaching them that it's wrong. It's very normal today while we are here and we are used to a certain concept, if somebody from abroad comes and tell us how to live our lives, what would we do? What would we do? Would we accept him? We wouldn't, right? But this was even, Muhammad ﷺ was not from abroad, he was from amongst them, and he was the most exemplary personality. But because the message he came with was going to change their lives in a way not benefiting them from their own understanding, that's what scared them off. And change is scary. If I am used to eat chicken every day, and you come to me and you tell me, no, chicken is bad for you. You're supposed to forget about chicken and eat only potatoes. Am I going to receive that message easily? Am I going to accept that message? No. But if with the time you start giving me potatoes and you start giving me other things and you make my life easier, etc., etc., and then you come to a point that you tell me, that chicken just, you give me an alternative. Islam, when it came, it didn't tell people, don't do this, do this. No. It started telling them what is good for them and bad for them. We forget about that. Al-khamr, alcohol, was not made haram in one day. Alcohol was something very common, right, amongst Arabs. And when the tahrim, the prohibition of alcohol would start, it started with what? وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى. Correct? Don't get near to prayer while you are drunk. And after that, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ, right? It became forbidden, but it took a course of years before it reached that moment. What I'm trying to say here is we have to understand how things went and how things developed and how things changed and how Islam became the concept of life in order for us to understand how to deal with it. Because look, reality is, we talked about it before the break, when you take the Mecca before Islam and the way people were living back then, and you take the way Muslims are living today, you compare societies, and that's what I do for work. You compare societies, you'll see a lot of similarities. Ignorance, racism, the way we treat women, abuse, theft, misuse of power, the way we built our societies, consumption, just food and drinks and that kind of stuff, no quality of life. The one who shouts most is the rule, the jungle, how does it called, the law of the fittest, right? So if you compare them, you'll see a lot of similarities. But we have a problem down here because now we are comparing two different societies before Islam and after Islam. And Allah teaches us in Quran al-Kareem that society changed because Rasulullah ﷺ was sent with revelation, right? So how can we explain that our societies today, even though the revelation is here, we are going back to the time before Islam? If you want to understand this, let's go back together to a happening in the time of the Prophet ﷺ which will explain to us what is happening with us today. The famous ayah. The famous ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. The beginning of the ayah says, hold onto the rope of Allah and do not what? Do not what? Do not split, do not divide, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hold onto the rope of Allah. Reality is, what I find really interesting, normally in lectures, when this ayah is being explained, we only take the first part. But you can't understand the first part if you don't go to the second part. Because this is here where the Prophet ﷺ will try to explain to us what I was trying to explain before. Listen to the ayah. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and remember the blessing of Allah upon you, that you were enemies. Look, you weren't friends of family, you were enemies. فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ, and He brought your hearts together and He created a bond. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا, and then you became with His blessing what? You became brothers. That's the opposite. We were enemies and we became brothers. We didn't become friends or colleagues or neighbors. We became brothers. Look, this is massive. When you go to the explanation of this ayah, you have to go to a hadith, where we learn from the hadith that, the Arab tribes, Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, who used to fight each other for a long time, Islam brought them together, right? And this ayah is also about them. They were enemies and they became brothers through Islam. In the time of Muhammad ﷺ being present in Medina, the Jews were practicing a policy or politics of divide and rule. They tried to divide the Arabs, or the tribe Aws al-Khazraj, and to rule over them. And the Arabs were, the Sahaba. They seemed sensitive for it. They seemed that there were fractions between them. There was some strange things happening, that people were starting to have issues, talking about each other, telling stories and not visiting each other, and then maybe not passing salam or greeting or everything. And the Prophet ﷺ, after the revelation of the ayah, he said something to them. What did he say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, أَوَ بِدَعْوَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ وَأَنَا بَيْنَ أَظْهُرِكُمْ. How can you go back to the principles of Jahiliyyah while I am amongst you today? See what happens here? So the Prophet ﷺ reminds them that what they are doing by being enemies of each other, by fighting each other, right? By hating each other, by that fraction which is happening between them, that is not a character of a believer. That is a character of a Jahiliyyah. So returning to that is returning to a Jahiliyyah. And when you became Muslim, you promised that you will not return to Jahiliyyah by choice. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran al-Kareem. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember the blessing of Allah, because it's a blessing. طيب. So I want to understand this blessing, and my brothers and sisters, reality teaches us that concept of the bond of brotherhood, which was implemented by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly after his arrival in Medina, is massive. It's massive. When you want to understand the social welfare system and our societies of today, and the égalité and fraternité of a French state and brotherhood and equality, whatever you want to call it. If you want to understand brotherhood, you have to go back to that day. Imagine that Muhammad ﷺ coming out as a refugee from Mecca, right? As a refugee, as a fugitive, as he ran away from Mecca, right? Going to Medina where he was received. That he would arrive in Medina, and the first thing he would do, he'd do what? What did he do? What was his first act? No, before that. Before that. He built a masjid. Jazakallah khair. He built a masjid as first step. Why? Why would you need a masjid? Center of the community. Bring people together. What else? A place of education. What else? Place of worship. What else? Yeah, place of worship. What else? Something very important.
To call people to Islam.
To call people to Islam. Dawah. Definitely. What else? I talked earlier about psychology, something emotional. When you are a refugee, what do you don't have? You're homeless, right? When you are a refugee. So when you're homeless, what do you need? Shelter. A roof. This masjid would become the home of who? The house of Allah. The house of Allah as a home for believers. Correct? So that first act of the Prophet ﷺ as an infrastructure, as setting up a building, and this building will be the center of the ummah. And from that day, by the decree of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every masjid built on earth is the house of Allah. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's not of my family nor of yours, it's not of my ethnicity upon you. No, it's the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with an intention to be the center, the place of education, the place of refuge, the place of bringing people together, place of worship, the house for those who are in need, the support point for people who come and ask for support, people who need to get to know Muslims, people who need to see Islam. That was the first act. But Rasulullah knew that having an infrastructure by physical building was not enough. He knew that people still would not understand the importance of a masjid from a perspective of a home. And he knew that this place could be misused, misunderstood. So what would be the next step? The next step would be to educate people how they should behave to each other. And that is what we know under the definition of al-ikha, which is the bond of brotherhood. Rasulullah ﷺ brought people together. And he didn't bring people together who already knew each other. No, he brought people together who did not know each other, strangers, one from Mecca and one from Medina. He brought them together and he said, now you are brothers. See, that's difficult to understand. How can I look at somebody as being my brother? Well, I have nothing in common with that person. Or at least, there is nothing between me and that person. We're not family, we're not married, we don't have any interests, we don't have a house. He's a wild stranger. He's not from my tribe, he's not from my country, he's from a total different place in the world. And now Rasulullah ﷺ is telling me that he's my brother. Again, the ayah says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. Hold on to the rope of Allah. And that is exactly the moment that Rasulullah ﷺ would teach his companions and would say the reason that you become brothers is because you have to hold on to the rope of Allah. The bond of brotherhood. He said you are used to something called brotherhood in families and brotherhood that you have a mother or a father in common. But now, because you have a religion in common is even more important than having a father or a mother in common. Therefore, the fact that you choose to become part of this belief, that makes you a brother and a sister of everyone who is part of that belief, whatever your background is, whatever your ethnicity is, whatever your color is, whatever your interest is, etc., etc. Again, today, in our days, and in a time where speech is very easy, where they say, speaking is free, correct? You can and say whatever you say. You hear a lot of time people saying to others like, I love you for the sake of Allah, you're my brother, you're my sister. When it comes on reality, it just came an empty definition. Because what is brotherhood? What do you expect? What do you expect from me as being your brother or sister, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam again gave us the example. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who came from Mecca, who was linked to somebody from Medina. That this man told him, the half of my property is yours, and he went even a step further. He said, I am married to two, you choose one of them. So even my family, I am ready to share with you my family. And look, again here, I love looking at seerah from a psychological perspective. Look, the Sahabi, he did not say to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, even though people were then used to be married to different wives and etc. When he said to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he didn't say to him, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, I'll marry you my second wife. Or I marry you my first because I don't like her anyway. Right? He didn't tell him, you know what, she makes me sick, tired, and she's too costly, whatever, you take her. No. He said, choose. What is that supposed to mean, choose? That's supposed to mean that I give you the right and I let you in control of my life, that you may want to marry the woman who is most beloved to me. And Arabs were known for their love for their women, right? Imagine what it means psychologically. Emotion. He said, no, because the bond of brotherhood goes beyond that. The bonds of brotherhood makes me, as a brother, as a believer, that there is nothing that could be more important than that. What was the answer of Abdurrahman ibn Auf? He understood what also the responsibility of a brother meant. That you would not harm your brother, even though he would want you to harm him by wanting to do good. So he was responsible. He said, no, show me the market, give me tools, navigate me and let me live my life. This is beyond any understanding of today. This is beyond any understanding. Because again, when you go to Hajj, for example, right? Or you go for Umrah, why do we wear ihram? Why? Why as men we wear two pieces of cloth, white? Why? To remind us, besides the fact that to remind us that is a state of our departure from this planet, it also reminds us of the bond of brotherhood. Because akhi, when you walk around, or ukhti, when you walk around in haram, there's no Muslim on this planet who would say, because of my money, or because of my name, or because I'm a president or king, I'm not going to wear ihram. Or I'm going to make tawaf by car or by bicycle while I'm possible. Or, I don't do sa'i bayna safa wal marwa, right? It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Rich or poor. And that's amazing. So a multi-billionaire and a person who doesn't own 1 rupee in his pocket go side by side making tawaf al-haram. Yalla, try to explain that to me how it works. And there's nobody who can protest. That's Islam. That's the principle of brotherhood. That there's no difference between rich and poor. And that the best amongst you is the most pious. And only Allah knows who is the most pious amongst us. We don't know. And Islam teaches us that you can't be arrogant. Because if you are arrogant, imagine, Hadith Rasulullah says, if there's one seed of arrogance in your heart, forget about paradise. Forget about it. مشات. كان يشيل جنة. مقداره حبة, small seed from arrogance. Forget about it. ما كاينش. طيب. So what is the alternative then? Alternative is tawadur, humbleness. Man tawada'a lillahi rafa'ah. When you are humble in front of Allah, Allah will increase your status. Again, why? Why? Because I can be whoever I am. I wouldn't reach the position of the Pharaoh, who built a pyramid, which up to today we go and visit and see and imagine how big and beautiful and how, you know, how amazing it is. It's built. Funny part is the pyramid meant for Pharaoh, that deep in his heart he believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because he knew that whatever he was powerful and rich and whatever, you know, the pharaohs, when they used to die, their wives used to go with them. Because they didn't want to go, they didn't want to be buried alone. And they wanted to leave something behind, proving that even there were the pharaohs on this earth, they were not able to control even their own life. What does that make me? That makes me a human being with nose and eyes and ears and feet and hands, but in reality, what do I control? What do I own? What do I own? Property, money, name, whatever. What am I going to take with me in my grave? What is it worth it, you know, to be how we behave today, and the way we treat each other, and the way we hurt each other, and the way we insult each other, and the way we cause fitna? What is it worth it? What does it lead me and bring me to? Did you ever come across somebody who never died or something? Or whom his money, you know, cured him from an illness which was not to be cured? Did you come across anybody? No. Where are they? How many people you come across in the world, subhanAllah, you know, it's too sad even for words, who are multi-millionaire and because of their illness can't even eat through their mouth, or can't even sleep because they have the how's it called? How is the illness called where you can't sleep? Insomnia, right? Imagine. He'll tell you, I'd rather give all my millions but sleep. That's the creation. That's how, you know, but we forget all about this, my dear brothers and sisters. We forget. We forget the essence of existence, the essence of our creation. We forget what it's all about. We forget that Zayn al-Abidin, Ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, you know, the grandson of Zayn al-Abidin of Ibn al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he said in his famous poetry, he said, ليس الغريب غريب الشام واليمن إن الغريب غريب اللحد والكفن. It's not a stranger who's stranger in Sham or Yemen. The stranger, a real stranger, was a stranger in his grave. Because nobody will enter his grave except alone. لتنهرن غريبا حال غربته الدهر ينهره بالذل والمحن سفري بعيد وزادي لن يبلغني وقوتي ضعفت والموت يتبعني. You know, it's all about our weakness. It's all about how I'm on a travel. I'm traveling. I could be away today. I could not even reach Bath this evening. I could not even reach home tomorrow. Correct? That's how life is. So am I ready to depart? Am I ready to meet my Creator? How are my books? When Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting amongst his companions, and he said, the man who will enter right now is a man of paradise. And the man entered. They did not know him. He was not a known companion. And people, you know, they were curious. Why would he be a man of paradise? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not explain. The second day, the same thing happened again, and the third day, the same thing happened again. So one of the curious Sahaba, if I'm not mistaken, it was the son of Amr al-As radiallahu anhu, who was very curious to find out why this man became a man of paradise. And he went to him and he said, you know, by the principle of the Arab, I want to be your guest for 3 days, to take me home with you. And his intention was to see how this man is living in order for him to follow that example. So he went living with that man for 3 days, and he didn't see anything, you know, special or extra. He didn't see a man who prays day and night or fasts day and night or something. So, you know, he went to the man on the third day, and he was very honest and sincere. He said, you know, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying this and that about you, and I really want to know why he mentioned you, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a man of paradise. So he said, to be honest, I don't know myself. And he started telling him, he said, the only thing I can do is I can tell you how I live my life. And you know, maybe you'll hear something which, I don't know, it's kind of special. So he told him, what happens here, what made this man of paradise, that the way he lived his life, that at the end of every day, he said he made sure that he would not go to sleep until he was sure that there was nobody in Medina who still had to forgive him, nor was there anybody in Medina whom he had to ask for forgiveness. So he would not leave any file open before going to sleep. He would go clean. If my brother is mad at me, or if I have a fight with somebody, or I said something wrong to somebody, I make sure that I do not go home to sleep before I am sure that that person has forgiven me, whether he made a mistake with me or not. Because Prophet ﷺ, he didn't say, wait to be forgiven by them whom you think you have to forgive. Go ask for forgiveness yourself, even they are at stake. The best amongst you is the one who approaches with salam, right? See, my brothers and sisters, the moral of this story, or the most important of the story of hold on to the rope of Allah, is that we have to understand, have to get rid of these characters of the Jahiliyyah. We have to get rid. The time of Makkah is the time of Makkah. It's off. It's beyond us. It's khalas. We Muslims want to get rid of those days. We want to stick onto the days of Medina. We want to stick to Islam after the arrival of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. We don't want to be arrogant. We don't want to be Fir'aun. We don't want to be that kind of people who, on the day of judgment, will be bankrupt. Prophet ﷺ said to Sahaba, do you know who's bankrupt? They said, Ya Rasulullah, bankrupt, al-muflisu, man la dirham lahu wa la dinar. Al-muflis, bankrupt, is the one who doesn't own any dirham or dinar. He said, no. He said, bankrupt is the man or the person who comes on a day of judgment and has done very good. Look, it's not somebody who came on a day of judgment and he did only bad. No. He said it's the man who will come on a day of judgment and he did a lot of good things. Only next to that, he was talking about that person and cursing that person and calling that person wrong names or whatever you want to call it, that will he come on the day of judgment, all these people will come to him and will take from his good deeds. And his good deeds will finish. And what they do then? They'll give him from their bad deeds. Exchange. And he will end in hell. See, my brothers and sisters, what is it all about? What is it all about at the end of the day? What do we want to gain from this life? I really want to remind myself and you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are better than that what they hear. I really want to remind myself and you that Islam, if it's well understood and well practiced, it will free us from slavery. And sometimes slavery sounds something big because we think normally when we think about slavery, it's about, other people or maybe other societies or states, owning us, but you can also be a slave of your own devil. You can be a slave of dunya. You can be a slave of money. And we want to be free. We want to be beautiful. We want to be sincere. We want to be, as we said earlier, adding value. We want to be happy, right? It's about happiness, isn't it? It's about happiness. But the thing is, it's not about happiness only in this life. It's about happiness in this life and the hereafter. And it's not about happiness against, again, the cost of somebody else. No, it doesn't work like that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us iman and strength and make our life easy and make us amongst those who try to live the best example. Because in reality, we are human beings full of mistakes and shortcomings. We make a lot of mistakes and, we need a lot of improvement. But as long as we admit that, and as long as we are humble, and as long as we want to learn, And as long as we are eager to be better, that's the only way we will survive. And that's the only way we will become better than we are today. Because as the moment you think you have reached already, then that's exactly the moment that you haven't even started to go to your destination. The moment you think that you are knowledgeable in a way that you can own the world, that's exactly the moment that you are finding out that you are the most ignorant person on this earth. Ibn Hazm says, when he started to seek knowledge, he says, the more I started seeking knowledge, the more I started to know that I don't know nothing. So the more knowledge, the less knowing, not the opposite. So be aware of that. And inshallah, before going to the conclusion, I would love to hear from you whether you have any questions or remarks, inshallah, and then we'll conclude this session, inshallah. Fadal, yeah, fadal. Now I can move, right?
How big an obligation is it to walk past someone and say salam alaikum?
How big it is?
Yeah, it's effective. If you walk past someone, you don't say salam alaikum, family or something. How important is it?
Is it conscious?
Is it effective prayer? Is it effective?
Is it by conscious or unconscious?
Not conscious. You know, I walk past you and say salam alaikum.
Why don't you want to say?
Falling out to you.
Again?
Falling out to you.
Oh, you fall out to me, and you do that for a long time?
Yes.